Flynn admits that he didn't tell his bosses, including Vice President Mike Pence, everything about those phone calls.
That's right. For more on the fallout, we turn to Caitlin Huey-Burns from RealClearPolitics. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you too. Good morning.
So we've learned that the Justice Department had previously warned the White House about Flynn's Russia contacts, and Democrats are calling for classified briefings. I guess the question on many people's minds is, does this end with Flynn's resignation, or will more heads roll? Who knew what, when, where, and how?
I think that's exactly the question, though, about whether there will be more fallout from this. This is a very significant deal, right? We're 3 weeks into this administration. To have your top national security advisor, the person that serves as kind of the orchestrator of all the national intelligence agencies, this is a really big deal. But what's interesting about this, too, is that Flynn resigned because he said that he did not provide the right information to the vice president. Not that he had the conversations in the first place. And so I think you're going to see on Capitol Hill a pressure on Republicans from Democrats to continue this investigation into the ties between the Trump campaign at the time and Russian officials. And so this issue has so many different components to it, and I think this will be kind of the layers will kind of unfold throughout the week.
And we're also hearing that it was the anger of Vice President Pence that sort of encouraged the president to take a second look at Flynn's behavior, suggesting maybe that if it wasn't for Mike Pence, perhaps he would still be there?
Well, Michael Flynn had told Mike Pence, according to the vice president's telling, that he did not discuss sanctions. And so Mike Pence, the vice president, then went on CBS Face the Nation, as we know, and said unequivocally that Michael Flynn had told him that the discussions were not talked about. And of course, the discussions came right after the Obama administration pressed sanctions against Russia for the interference in the election. And we heard from Russia that they were not going to retaliate.
Strange.
And so exactly, and that's what raised all of these questions regarding Flynn. And what's really interesting, too, is you had the Justice Department, of course, having told the Trump administration a month ago about these concerns. So I think there are a lot of questions here. The vice president, his issue that he was pointing to was the issue of trust, of course. That is a huge component of this, most critical in this kind of environment. It also shows that we've talked a lot about how Trump values loyalty. Michael Flynn, of course, has been with him since the early days of the campaign, a close advisor to him. But Mike Pence is the vice president of the United States. If he had sway, that shows an interesting dynamic going on. But it also shows the difference between governing and the necessities involved compared to the campaign.
Here's another question for you, Caitlin, and it comes directly from the President of the United States, who has just tweeted, the real story here is, why are there so many illegal leaks coming out of Washington? Will these leaks be happening as I deal on North Korea, etc.? That is an interesting question. This is a very leaky administration.
Exactly.
Have you seen anything like this in recent memory?
Well, no. This is, and you talk to people who have covered administrations for decades, and this is certainly unprecedented in terms of the amount of leaks. What's also important to consider here, though, is that Donald Trump does not have his entire team in place at the White House. He does not have key positions filled within the agencies, not just the top posts, but the deputy posts. And during the transition, I was talking to officials who kind of cover, or who kind of helped president's transition to the presidency, president's-elect, I should say, and they point to those specific things as really key to a presidential administration. And so he doesn't have his team in place. There are a lot of leftovers, but there's also a lot of concern within these agencies about how the president is handling a lot of these things.
Does it strike you interesting that the leaks are coming and people on the administration are talking to folks like yourself? They're talking to people at the Washington Post, the New York Times, Politico, CBS News. And it's because they're perhaps worried or they're concerned about some of the things that they're seeing behind the scenes, behind closed doors.
Certainly the way it's being couched.
That's right.
You know, that it's not about disloyalty. It's about genuine concern.
Genuine concern for the country.
Think about a lot of the people in these kinds of posts are longtime public servants. And, of course, you have a president who has no experience in public service, in politics, has no experience in issues like national security, campaigned on that fact, really. And so there are certainly growing pains, learning curves, but this is a kind of a different thing, right? Especially since Flynn was so controversial from the outset. It's not exactly a surprise. We knew that he was having these conversations. And so really asking, the president is talking about pursuing leaks, and that's certainly, an endeavor that he can embark on. But that is not the issue here. The issue is trust and getting advice from someone that the administration figured that it couldn't trust.
So, Caitlin, before we let you go, the Kremlin has reacted, and there's a statement saying, look, this is an internal matter, the resignation of Flynn. But we also heard from Russian officials saying that it seems that an anti-Russian feeling has infected the White House. Russophobia, I think, was the word that was used. Do you think we might start to see a shift in how this administration addresses Russia, treats Russia?
That's a really great question, and I don't think that this will be something that changes the president's mind. But it does raise the question of what he will do regarding Russia, right? He has not said whether he will keep sanctions in place. That was a key issue that came up during the confirmation hearings for relevant cabinet officials. And what's important here, too, is that, the conversations that Flynn had with Russian officials, whether that was communicated or under the counsel of the president, right? We don't know. And so that raises a lot of questions about what Trump wanted from these conversations, whether he knew they were taking place, and if so, what he wanted to come out of them. But I think, will have investigations on Capitol Hill, of course, and you also have Republican lawmakers trying to come up with ways to keep those sanctions in place, even if the president doesn't want to.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Caitlin.
Good to see you.